Hi, I'm Lubomir. Let's continue with the next topic. Part 4 Buddhism. Buddhism is a few centuries older than Christianity, but that is not the reason for its great difference. The reason is the mindset of the Asian part of the world. We might find some similarities between Greek mythology and Hinduism. If we would like to find some common feature of ancient Western and Eastern thought, that common feature may be polytheism, that is to say, not the confession of only one God. In the West and the Middle East, the belief in one God later prevailed. The East retained polytheism, but also took a completely new path, which was preached by Gautama Buddha. It is unique in its approach to guiding one along the spiritual path in its description as well as in its determination of the destination of that path. Buddhism professes no God, and thus its goal is not to see or become one with God. The goal is deliverance from the cycle of birth and death. The great enlightenment that culminates the Buddha's teaching has no particular object as its goal, which awaits us at the end of this path. Instead, it comes through the realization of his teaching to absolute freedom and the complete cessation of suffering. Buddhism professes no intermediary to convey this freedom and the end of suffering. It preaches an 8-part path that describes what one must do to fully fulfill this teaching in the realization of the sublime truth. These 8 parts of the path can be compared to the 10 commandments of the New Testament. These are also the conditions that the pilgrim must observe on the spiritual path. They are the rules he must follow if he wishes to progress on this path towards its goal. Buddhism goes further and does not merely impose rules of conduct, but directly imposes as a condition of advancement the practice of spiritual exercises, namely meditation and contemplation. These forms of spiritual practice are also known to Christianity, but they are not commonly required as a condition for advancement on the spiritual path. This is a very important distinction concerning spiritual practice. In Christianity, the spiritual practice of meditation and contemplation is usually considered a means of realization only for people who have dedicated their lives fully to God and are thus part of a monastic order. The Buddha laid down the 4 noble truths, which reveal the process of breaking out of the cycle of suffering. These truths say: 1. What is suffering? 2. How suffering arises? 3. What is the elimination of suffering? 4. What is the path to the elimination of suffering? In the 4th point, it talks about the middle path leading to peace, knowledge, enlightenment. It is the sublime 8-fold path. I have already mentioned this 8-part path. The last point is the most interesting. It speaks of true concentration, in which the 4 contemplative stages are realized, and it explicitly points out that this is the most important point. The Buddha discovered during his spiritual journey that it is not possible to reach the realization of the highest enlightenment, nirvana, by merely exercising the body through asceticism, that is, by denying oneself any bodily pleasures. For this, daily meditation and contemplation is necessary. They have chosen their own approach to Buddhism in Japan. This form of Buddhism is called Zen. The practice of Zen Buddhism includes meditation, zazen of course, but it also includes Zen-specific practices such as mondo, edifying stories, koan, a story containing a contradiction, or haiku, the art of making short poems. They were able to apply elements of Zen to almost every area of life. This was most evident in the martial art, Bushido. Zen provided a whole new perspective on sword fighting or archery training. No longer is perfect mastery of the technique considered the only requirement for excellence, but perfect mastery of one's mind is also required. Therefore, Japanese warriors also underwent the realization of the practice of Zen. This was to help them control their emotions and learn concentration, which was crucial in a fight to the death. They visited Zen masters and practiced the means of Zen Buddhism under their guidance. The latter, through meditation and contemplation, freed them from the fear of death. This release from the fear of death is, of course, the result of years of practice and progress on this path to higher levels of knowledge. This comes only after the realization of samadhi. With further, more intense emptying of the mind, understanding deepens and kensho, and the first little satori appears, which is the prerequisite for the great death that culminates in the great enlightenment, satori. Perhaps the most famous description of the progression to enlightenment in Buddhism is its depiction in the 8 or 10 images of the taming of the buffalo. 8 images are usually cited. The reason for this is that there is a misunderstanding and inability to describe what the 9th and 10th images actually represent. Since this is the culmination of the realization of the spiritual path as such, few will achieve this realization. Even the masters of Zen Buddhism rarely reach the highest stage of enlightenment. The level of masterly study begins with the deepening of samadhi. Even this level is difficult to attain and is only realized by a very small proportion of Buddhists. The obstacle to pinpointing where the adept for enlightenment, this can be a monk or a lay person, is on the spiritual path is Buddhism's reluctance to use words. These he regards as an obstacle that must be eliminated altogether. This is the reason that the various stages of the path are not precisely defined, and mistakes can be made in the guidance of the adept by the master, or even in the recognition of the master's level as such. Therefore, in Buddhist literature, one often comes across criticism of a master who is dissatisfied with the level of Buddhism and the large number of false masters. An example of this misunderstanding is the aforementioned depiction of the taming of the buffalo. The 9th image mostly depicts nature, and the 10th depicts an old man and a boy, or a man with a bottle of sake in his hand. The last painting expresses the so-called return to the marketplace. This means that an enlightened person can go wherever he likes and do whatever he likes because the dust of this world does not cling to him. He can even drink alcohol and eat whatever he feels like. This is what a large number of Buddhists have a problem with, and that is why they prefer to avoid showing the last 2 images and consider the 8th image as the end of the path. This is the empty circle representing the great death, and thus the abolition of dependence and the distinction between life and death. However, there are those who have reached such a level that they are able to interpret even the last 2 images. One of them is Shizuteru Ueda. The 8th image expresses the perfect emptiness that is the result of the non-thought's mind. The 9th image expresses void, which is the result of the no-thought's mind. Hishiryo in Japanese Zen Buddhism. Buddhism is represented by different schools, which differ mainly in what they emphasize in practicing the path. In some places, the emphasis is on sutra study, in others, on solving koans or meditation. The sutra is the teaching of the insubstantiality of all phenomena surrounding a person or taking place in his mind. These phenomena are by their very nature empty, illusory. In some places, they regard enlightenment as something that comes suddenly, in others, as something that comes gradually. In reality, enlightenment does not come because it has never gone. It does not stand because it has never flowed. It is not beyond time because time is only a word. Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism in particular, is a bountiful source of literature that has been produced over the centuries by extraordinary individuals who have attained a high level of knowledge. There are the works of masters who have combined Buddhism with various kinds of art, thus giving people of different dispositions the opportunity for realization. These different approaches allow a high degree of concentration to be realized through art, which can create the necessary space for entering into deeper understanding, samadhi. I can cite as examples several authors of worthy books: Takuan, Dogen, D.T. Suzuki, Miyamoto Musashi, or Huineng. I will conclude with one example of how poetically Buddhism can handle the expression of the realization of knowledge and at the same time reveal the difference in its depth. When one sits and meditates, one sees people coming and going over a wide bridge, just like trees growing deep in the mountains. This is the verse that Daito is the author of. The answer, or taking this verse to the next level, is the verse written by Tenkei. When one sits and meditates, one sees people who come and go over a wide bridge just as they are. Be unmovable in your determination to cross your legs and meditate every day. Clear your mind and be well.